A couple weeks ago, we had the chiropractor out to take a look at Rudnick. Since we had all of our issues with saddle fitting and everything that was going on, I just figured it would be a really good way to just make sure that everything was kind of still in place and where it needed to be. By this point, we had already figured out that his saddle had been fitting him poorly, and I had already gotten him changed into a saddle that was much more appropriate for his size. So now that I knew he was moving a lot better, I just wanted to make sure that everything was still where it needed to be and there was nothing that was going to be causing any further issues down the road. Now, this is the first time Rudnick has ever seen a horse chiro, so I really wasn't sure what to expect with the whole process. I'd honestly actually never seen horse chiropractic in person either, so even I wasn't sure what to expect going into this. And of course, this was one of the hottest days that week as well, but thankfully we did have the shelter to stand under for a little bit of shade. Now, she started off with his legs, which was, I thought it was really cute because she was trying to get a feel for his legs, but Rudnick is so used to having farrier work done and having me clean his feet. Every time she touched his leg, he would pick it up thinking that's what she was wanting him to do, but she was just trying to get a feel for them, make sure that nothing was out of place. But it was really cute watching him pick up his foot every single time she touched his leg. He was trying so hard to be such a good boy. Now, because I'd never seen this process done either, I really wasn't sure what to expect. And at this point here, she's kind of got like this rock that she's taking down alongside the vertebrae of his spine, kind of just making sure that everything is in line. She did notice that he was a little bit out on the one side of his withers, but you can just see that he's never experienced this before, and so he kind of jumps a little bit every time she gives him a little crack. But overall, I think he actually did amazingly well. He was very patient. He's got his ears turned back. He's definitely paying attention and listening to see what it is that's going on, but he really didn't react the way that I thought he would. He wasn't acting flighty or in pain or uncomfortable. There were a couple of times he looked at me kind of like, "Mom, why is she hitting me?" But overall, he was a really good boy and just stood there very patiently for her while she did what she had to do. Sometimes it's really hard to know how Rudnick's going to react in situations that he's never been in before, just based off of his history and the condition he was in when I first adopted him. Because he was such a nervous and reactive and even at times explosive colt, sometimes I'm almost bracing for the worst possible scenario. I'm thinking that he's going to freak out, he's going to lash out, he's going to get himself hurt, he's going to hurt someone. And then he just completely surprises me, like in this situation, for example. I mean, I don't always love it when people are pounding around on my spine, but I would say considering everything, he handled it like a pro. You would think that he had done this 100 times before, barely flinched most of the time, maybe a little bit of a jumper reaction, but I think he could also tell that it was helping him, which made it a lot easier for him to kind of just bear through the whole process. She did a really thorough job going down his spine. She did notice he was a little bit out in the right withers, and over the last few years I've noticed that Rudnick's always kind of leaning into one hip or the other, and I never really thought much about it because it's just something that horses do, but it seemed that he was always doing it, and I never thought that it would be an alignment issue until she mentioned it while we were doing our exam there and said that that could actually stop now that she had given him the adjustment. Unless, of course, he had already gotten to the point where this developed into a habit, but she said that him constantly shifting his weight into one hip or the other could definitely have been caused by the slight disalignment that she did find in his one side. And it was really cool watching her process because she was so thorough. Every time she did an adjustment, she would take a step back, kind of evaluate things to see how he was lining up. She would stand behind him just to kind of get an eyeball and see where he was at. And she was definitely very thorough in her entire process. And like I said, Rudnick was so patient. This was completely new experience for him. And he handled it like I said, like he'd done this 100 times before. After each adjustment, she would go back over the spine and kind of just feel down the vertebrae just to make sure that she didn't miss any spots or there was nothing else that was a little bit out of whack. But she did spend quite a bit of time on his back, and although there was a couple spots that were out, nothing that was really any major or would have caused him any real discomfort. Mostly just would have caused him to kind of, like I said, leaning to one side or the other, but nothing that would have really made the saddle fitting situation any better or any worse. So thankfully, we don't really have any issues that we're dealing with from all of that. And overall, he was in pretty good shape considering he's 6 years old and this is the first time he's ever had an adjustment done. And then again, as she was getting to the back feet, he started picking them up thinking that she wanted to take a look at his feet. But obviously she's trying to get him to put his foot down as flat as possible so that she can get a proper look at his leg and the alignment of his hips back there. But of course, anytime she touched his leg, he'd pick up his foot for her, thinking that that's what she was going to be asking for. And because we've been working really hard over the last year to get his hooves back into the ideal condition, we did struggle with those for a while as well, mainly just because we did have a farrier at one point who kind of trimmed her horses one size fits all. So she would hack his feet all the way down, his heels would be way too low, and he would actually end up lame for quite a few weeks as his feet were growing back out again. And there were times that he looked like he could barely even walk because he was so sore and sensitive on his soles. So because that's been a work in progress as well, now that he's getting an alignment done, it is going to kind of throw out the balance of his hooves now. However, we are going to be able to get that fixed with our next trim. But at this point here, we were just doing some work on his hips. She was able to kind of adjust them where they needed to go. Nothing major, kind of just like a crack and a pop here or there. He was, like I said, in overall really good condition considering he'd never had an adjustment done in 6 years. So again, he's picking up his foot for her when she touches his leg, and all she wants is him to just put it down flat so she can get a better look at it. But I remember when she did his back foot there was actually a decent sized pop, which kind of surprised me. But again, nothing crazy, nothing serious, and he hardly even flinched through the whole thing. And then again, after every adjustment, she would go back just to kind of feel to see that everything's back into place now. Nothing was needing any further adjusting, and everything was pretty easy. It was really straightforward, and she was able to get everything kind of realigned quite simply. Every now and then we would get him to do some movements just to kind of see how he was moving out, how he was walking, if there was any other little areas that needed to be tweaked. But overall, he started moving really well. I personally didn't notice a huge difference just because my eye isn't trained to catch that kind of thing. And because there was nothing that was crazy out of whack, it wasn't huge, major changes that we were going to be seeing, but she was happy with the results at the end. She was able to get a little bit of a crack out of some of his joints in his legs there. And then again, she would just stand behind him, give him a quick eye over, make sure everything was looking good, and that she hadn't really missed anything. But super thorough. I was so impressed with her work, and she was so good with Rudnick. He was so chill through the entire process. She was so gentle, but she was thorough and efficient. But it was really cool watching how she would eye everything out, and then she would go, she'd make a quick adjustment, she'd move back behind him again, take another look just to make sure that it was good. But she definitely has a trained eye because she was noticing things obviously I wouldn't notice. And then she started working on his jaw, which I honestly didn't even think about when I thought about a horse chiropractor. I don't know why. Obviously, it's going to be one of the biggest things to look at as well. She did notice a little bit of disalignment in the jaw there, so she had to do a little bit of work on that. But because we ride bitless, it's not something that we would have ever really noticed an issue with while we were riding, so it was a pretty easy fix overall. We did have to move out of the shade for this adjustment just because she did warn me that sometimes horses are known to throw their head up when getting their jaw adjusted. But again, Rudnick handled it like a pro. He gave a little bit of a head yank, but he really did not seem to care overall, and pretty much was just sniffing around for his treats after it was done. So as soon as she was done with that, we moved back into the shade because it was getting hot, and just a couple minutes we were out in the sun. And she was just giving him a once-over as we finished everything up, just to make sure that she hadn't missed any spots or there was nothing that still needed a little bit more work done on it. The whole process took about 25-30 minutes, and Rudnick stood very patiently through the entire thing. I was honestly so surprised. I really expected him to put up a little bit more of a fight. Not that I thought he was going to do anything crazy, but again, this was his first time ever having an adjustment done, So I really didn't know what to expect going into this. She did some flexing with his neck at the end of it there just to make sure that he was moving and bending properly. He didn't have too much strain or discomfort in anything that he was doing. And honestly, I did notice that he actually did have quite a bit more movement and freedom for mobility in his neck once she was done with all of her adjustments. And then, of course, he's got a sniff to see where his treats are at, because obviously he's been a very good boy through the entire process, so he deserves all the treats. Once we finished up, she got me to just walk him out to see how he was moving, make sure that everything was good, and she was super impressed with his movement after this. And like I said, while my eye isn't really trained to catch all the little things, she said that she noticed a huge improvement in the way he was walking out by the time the adjustment was done. So that was Rudnick's first experience with the chiro, and she'll be coming back out in a couple more weeks to just do a follow-up with him.
Now it's become like a habit.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be something that you keep doing.
Yeah. I might get the saddle on straight.
Okay. He's all done.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll just grab your number.